This young woman came to us for infertility, and we asked her several times, have you ever been pregnant before? And she said, no, 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 never. So we performed a procedure called a hysteroscopy, where we, like a laparoscopy, we take a camera and we go into the uterus to see what's up, like why is this not working? Tests seem to be fine. And inside we found tiny bones, because she'd had an unsafe abortion at a younger age, and those bones had
Tiny
kind of
bones.
stuck around the bones of the previous fetus, because it was performed in an unsafe fashion. We still saw those little bones after. Eventually, she had to open up because we knew she'd had an abortion.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Clarity Amidst Clutter. This is your host, Sriya Kundu. And we're back with another intriguing conversation, an intriguing topic for that matter, and a fact that we've just gotten to our hands. And just a few weeks ago rather, the world population has crossed the 8 billion mark. Now, when we talk about the world population, there has been enough conversations about concerns regarding the population growing. But then indicators in the recent times have said that there is a chance that the world population growth might get stunted. And well, I'll just give a little bit of statistics here, wherein at 1960s, our world population used to stand at 3 billion. And now in the 2023, we are at 8 billion. And that is a gap of 63 years roughly. And the indicators, or rather the predictions that we have, is that by the year 2080, we will peak out at 10.4 billion, which is just a 2.4 billion growth from the current time to a time period of which roughly goes to around 57 years. Is that alarming? Is that concerning? Well, and why is this happening? What are the factors that might be contributing to this particular, well, not a prophecy, but a prediction coming true? Is it a normal curve wherein the curve just peaks out and then it starts decreasing, or is there more to it? Well, to discuss all of this in today's episode, I have a very special guest with me, Dr. Tanaya. Well, you all know her as Dr. Cuterus, and she's a millennial doctor working for the women's healthcare. And well, welcome, Tanaya. Hello, good to have you on the show. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, having a great day so far. How are you?
Great, great. So lovely having you here. World population growth. And the world population growth has always been a very interesting topic, especially because there are like several factors which one has to think about, which one has to circle in when they talk about predictions, when they talk about certain projections for our world population growth rates. And in the recent times, this has been a growing concern across countries around the world that the population growth will slow down. And it's actually an ironic situation because India again is rapidly growing when it comes to the world population, right? And when we talk about factors here, I think a very important and a repetitive factor that has always come up to the front whenever spoken about world population growth is fertility rates. And well, that is your specialization. So, what would your opening remark be about this?
I think across the globe we're seeing, a general change in people and people's desire to have children. There has been, the newer generations are kind of struggling with the idea of having children and are making changes in the way we've generally perceived what a family is, and we've generally perceived the idea of completing your life goals is, I guess. So there's absolutely been a very, very significant change. We've seen it in like high and middle income countries as well, and it's slowly also going to sort of get into more low income countries as well.
Right. I'm glad you spoke about the higher lower income countries because this pattern of higher income countries having one of the lowest birth rates across the world is something which has been there for quite some time. But the thing is that the gap between the higher income countries and the lower income countries, what has started happening is it started narrowing down now. Because somewhere or the other, we've started noticing this pattern that even the countries that lie in the middle, they're not in either of the extremes, and the ones which are in the lower band economically, they also have started following the pattern of higher income countries, wherein the newer generations, we see, I wouldn't say they have a hesitation, but they aren't quick to jump on the train of family planning where they are like, Arey, we'll get married by, mid-20s maximum, have kids by the next 2 years. And that this is probably a very Indian mentality of talking about that bacche to karne hi hai by 30. And like, especially like we've heard, I mean, we joke about aunties talking about this, but this is actually an honest concern people have, that even the idea of, women freezing their eggs or like marrying after 30 is like a very big concern or a cause of panic for that matter for most Indian families, because they are very concerned about their particular family planning happening, right? But now, when we look at it, the mentality has slowly started changing. And, people, the newer generations are more comfortable in not only expressing it, but also going ahead and following the
Yeah.
particular notion of maybe not having kids, or even if they do have, maybe one, and that too at a later stage of their life. It really doesn't matter if they can't, because they're always open for other methods like surrogacy or, adoption. Why do you think this mentality has changed? Is there a certain awareness that's been going around, maybe increased use of contraceptives, or like what is the change? Why is this change happening, and what is this particular trend predicting?
So there's a significant number of factors that are involved in why the birth rate is changing and the desire for children is changing. The first thing is, the technologies are available now. We never had these options before. Surrogacy was not as easily available. Fertility treatments have honestly developed in the past 50 years. And in those 50 years, we've had significant advancements, particularly in the past 20 years. So these kind of, the option was never there. Now that people have that accessibility to these choices, they can do that. Secondly, there's a very significant shift in the way our economics have been in our families. More and more young people are getting more independent. They're having more disposable income that they're able to spend on things that they want to spend. So if I want to spend 2 lakh rupees on freezing my eggs, I can afford to do that without, taking permission from my parents or whatever, because that's how it used to be. And,
it's no longer a luxury per se. It's available and accessible to the common man as well, or rather common woman.
I would still say it's still quite expensive, so it's still a bit of a luxury in some ways. But the availability of this option is at least there now, which was never there. And secondly, a very significant shift has come from the fact that medicine has improved dramatically and drastically. So earlier, you would have to have multiple children, otherwise some of them would die in, childbirth. Some of them would die from infectious diseases. With so much vaccination and with such beautiful public health protocols we've developed over the past 50 years or so.
And this is thinking about all countries across the world, like not all,
globally.
Most countries globally.
Yeah. We've had great vaccination programs. These horrific childhood diseases are going down, which means more and more children are surviving into adulthood, which means it doesn't necessitate having 10 children in one go, because 5 of those will survive. So childhood mortality, neonatal mortality is going down significantly. And then of course there's a huge shift in the economic policies of the world. The cost of living crisis is substantial. And it's difficult to survive on as one person earning for themselves. To add a family on top and to add multiple children on top is a burden I don't think young people are prepared for.
Right. Absolutely. And when we're talking about young people, I think lifestyle also plays an important role here, would you say? Because nowadays, honestly, there have been a lot of positive changes that have come in when we speak of lifestyle. There have been a lot of negative changes as well that we've seen. I mean, if we were to talk about India itself, and it's no longer a very orthodox discussion per se to have about the fact that women in India, and not just women, it has increased amongst women and men equally, wherein patterns of like people drinking alcohol, consuming tobacco in whatever forms, and drugs in general. There have these angles have been coming in where we've seen the problems of consumption of drugs or like alcohol and other such substances becoming more common amongst the youth here. And well, yes, there have been measures to control that as well and keep that in check. But how far would you say, and honestly, not just the consumption of these particular substances, but even in general, we've like one major lifestyle change is something that we've noticed recently is the fact that people of a younger generation, like from between the age of 20 to 30, they have started not only started working, but the kind of work patterns they are being put in is extremely intense, which has led to a shift in probably the kind of sleep patterns which they have, the kind of the very fact that they have like I myself have sat for long hours in like horrifying postures because it's just not clicked in my own head that I've been in this particular posture for so long. And then when I realize it, when I get up, and that's when I realize, oh my God, this is actually affecting my body. And it's also true for eating habits as well. So similarly, all these lifestyle changes have come from several factors. And so, how would you say these lifestyle changes have affected fertility rates as well, or has it at all?
No, there has absolutely been a lot of change in how our fertility has been. There's earlier we used to have children quick and early. You
Hmm.
know, the best years for having your children are technically, according to like all biology, unfortunately, are in your late 20s and in your you want to get it done before your early 30s, essentially.
Hmm.
So that is the era in which most people are still in school right now. We're still doing
Right.
degrees, we're still doing or in early stage careers. So having a child at that time is just not something we can plan for realistically.
Right.
That, and we've had such a switch in the way our lifestyles are. Like you mentioned, alcohol, substance abuse, all of these things are quite rampant. Another thing that's very important to note is that there's been a serious uptake in people who go to the gym now, which is a great thing. But then there's also a serious uptake in the number of people who abuse these steroids. Now, steroids have a side
Right.
effect of reducing your sperm count, reducing the size of the testicles, and therefore reducing your fertility.
Right.
And as
this
more
is
and
true
more,
for both men and women.
significantly so for men.
Men.
With women, there are different effects because it doesn't. So it affects the testosterone in your body.
Right.
With women, we do need testosterone, but for men, they're significantly more testosterone dependent than women are.
Right.
So the kind of changes it creates in your body, while I'm very happy that there's more of a fitness movement. India has one of the lowest population numbers for gym going. I think in the States it's like 20% of the population has a gym membership. In India has less
We
than
come from an era of
0.5%.
akhadas and like wrestlers and people getting up on the ground.
But it's
This is
still
a
a
new
shockingly low
concept,
number.
right? Right.
And the fact that more and more people are turning to these Instagram ideals of what beautiful bodies should be like as opposed to functional bodies, which means there's a very high abuse of such performance enhancement substances, which
Right.
often do affect your fertility. And of course, the stress plays such a huge role. Any woman who has missed her periods during her boards knows that stress has a huge role in your hormonal and your menstrual and your reproductive cycle.
Right.
So
Right.
with changing lifestyle patterns, with
Mm-hmm.
with a change in the way people have the maturity to decide what they want with their lives. I'm honestly, as a fertility doctor, it kind of concerns me a little bit that we're delaying fertility more and more and more. But as a person, I feel very happy that we're getting more mature people who are becoming parents and who are
Right.
more prepared financially, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, to
To become
make that
parents.
decision. Yeah, and eventually be better parents and lead to more developed children. That's on the other end, of course, but it's quite a rampant change in the way things have been, with the way family structures in our country are changing as we are becoming more and more globalized, as we are becoming more and more westernized. The idea of, do graduation, do one quick degree, and then get married and have a kid is definitely going away.
It's an obsolete thought now, and like emancipate, like women have not just gotten more empowered, but they've started thinking for themselves as to like even I've seen women who have gotten married, and it's not just people who are highly career oriented, but there are women who've gotten married, but they've still chosen not to have kids till a certain age in their life, and that is the kind of independence, you may say, or empowerment also for that matter, or education for that matter, whatever it is. There is a change in that mentality, which like it's mentality, like I said, it's mentality and fertility rates that has been going hand in hand, it seems, at least in India. And when we speak of India, and another thing, like you just told me about Instagram trends or like social media trends, I've watched your videos on Instagram, and they are as like entertainment and education packaged together. Absolutely. But I've seen some of your videos where you do these segments on bizarre ideas or like bizarre thought processes of people, like what they think is facts you've come across. So, any bizarre particular thoughts or conversations you've come across concerning this particular topic, or like whatever discussion we've been having so far on these particular topics?
I don't know about bizarre, but I think some pretty important conversations that I've come across is the fact that there is a very large voluntarily child-free community in India. I was very surprised to see that, in in the kind of conversations I've had, I'm very surprised. I can't give you any numbers because I didn't run any sort of analyses on these, but the number of people who resonate with the idea of voluntarily going child free is pretty significant. And I would imagine that you'd see more women than men making this choice, because lovely having a child is significantly more impactful on a woman than it is on a man. And I'm not trying to diminish their credit or whatever, but kind of body changes you go through. A lot of men are also interested in going voluntarily child free, which I find very, very interesting. And the concerns stem from the thought behind doing this stems from a very educated analysis of their own lives. People are very clear about this, that hey, I have two sets of parents, like my in-laws and my parents, and then I have four sets of grandparents, and then I have my wife or my partner or my husband to take care of, then I have three dogs. How am I going to afford having a child in the middle of all of this? That financial autonomy going away from your life, and especially with there has not been a change in the way our minimum wages have gone up, and there's still a very significant gender disparity in terms of how people get paid, women versus men. Job security is not really a thing, to be honest. More and more that's changing, so people actually sit down and very educatedly make this choice, which I find quite interesting, because back in the day this was not really an option. You were told abhi shaadi kar liya, bachcha karna hai.
Bachcha karenge, like that's not even a thought. Like the whole point of getting married is you can have a kid.
Exactly.
That is not even a question of not like thinking that you'll not have a kid.
Marriage is in some ways a social sanction of having a child, but also at the same time, marriage is having a child is an obligation of being married. So that obligatory role is going away, which I find very, very interesting. And the fact that more and more women are in a position that they're able to decide this. They have that sort of autonomy in their lives, and they're not being just told what to do, and they're not just sort of having to listen to it. They have their own lives, they have their own money, they have their own just decision making capacity and the independence to be able to make such radical decisions. To be honest, it is quite radical even now. So yeah, I think it's great to see this change, and it's great to also see that people are quite vocal about it. The child free community is active in advocating for it.
Right. But I think that's a very important point. People have started doing, like, not doing this thing, but I think just like you said, that the volume of child free people out there, couples out there, has gone up so significantly. I think a lot of onus also goes to pet owners. When we talk about this, they have slowly, we've seen this shift where people are like, yes, we are dog owners and cat owners, and we're happy to be so. But
I
actually,
think
uh,
I think another thing that is important to remember is that more and more people have the liberty of walking out of marriages that don't work now.
right.
So
And bringing a child into a marriage that you're not too sure of is actually torture for the child.
absolutely,
You're basically bringing a life on earth and then just being like not ruining that life per se, but definitely putting them in a spot they didn't ask for.
it is stressful for the children, and then
Absolutely.
the age at which we're finding our right partner, as we're growing as people, we're growing in what we want to picture our lives as. So we have a specific criteria. If you've seen Indian matchmaking, they've got this whole list of, this is the things I want in my
You
partner.
can't get 100% compatibility. I'm very sorry.
70% is good. But for 60-70% पहुंचने में भी इतना time लगता है that our sort of quest for the perfect partner takes so long that
Right.
by the time you find a partner, and then you put in the time and investment that it requires for a relationship, then
Absolutely.
by that time a lot of people are often a little old, and their fertility may be compromised, especially for women. Age has a very significant role in your fertility. So if you decide to have a child after a certain age, then that actual child procedure takes a while, and then as you
Right.
grow older and you start going through fertility treatments, the older you are, the lower your success rate is going to be. So
Right.
it there's a lot of sociological factors that come into play in this decision of
Right.
wanting to delay fertility and wanting to maybe not pursue any fertility angle.
Right, right. Absolutely. I think this is one of the biggest reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I had actually thought about, like, not just thought about, I've read a lot of interviews and gone through reports wherein economists have spoke about this, wherein experts have spoken about this. But I think a doctor's point of view is very important. And because, yes, we look at it from a sociological perspective as well. At the end of the day, when we talk about world population, we're studying a significant shift in the society and how the society is functioning. And yes, sure, we can always throw it around as, oh my god, the world's going to come to an end because human beings are going to become extinct. But on a serious note on that, definitely it is it's social patterns changing, and very significantly so, and very concerningly, this concern here is only the swift way that the things are happening, the rapid way things are happening. Well, while we're on that topic, I would also want to touch upon this one criteria, wherein abortion abortion as a practice. I had already mentioned about contraceptives and awareness about contraceptives having gone up, but also abortion, or the very concept of plan B, that has also become more common among people. Way more than what it was before. Definitely across the country, there is still excessive controversies about whether abortion should be legal, shouldn't be legal. And it still continues to be a question in India. Yes, it is legal here, but it still continues to be a question here. And unfortunately, the kind of abortion procedures at a lot of places, the way it is done, there are a lot of places, a lot of clinics in India which does it off the records. It's not safe the way they go about with abortion. And but in general, despite these stories and accounts surfacing up there, people still are not okay per se, but they still consider abortion or plan B as an option. I mean, how far has that affected, or how far does that support this particular prediction that we have about the world population growth?
Okay, so first off, Plan B is actually the emergency contraceptive pill. So that is different from abortions.
Right.
Emergency contraception was invented quite recently. Actually, if I'm not wrong, it was in the 1990s. So the ability to make that choice that, hey, my contraception has failed and I need to stop this in some way, before it gets to the stage that we have to do an abortion, which is an invasive medical procedure, that of course has provided a lot of autonomy and liberty to a lot of people, for sure. But as far as abortion access goes, I think the bigger problem in India with abortion is the sex determination.
Right.
Largely, our country has been very abortion friendly, and there's not so much of an ideological warfare in India about abortions as there is in, say, some other countries. For example, I used to live in the States, where it was a very heavy conversation, and it's extremely politicized over there. So in India, there is great access and availability of abortion, but because there is a very large sex determination angle, and sex selective abortions happen and people seek them, is why we have a very large number of unsafe abortions. Even with such good reproductive rights access and even with such good abortions access, we continue to have this problem. I don't know, honestly, if that changes the option of being able to do this changes the people's decision of whether or not to pursue safe sex or protected sex, or their manage their fertility so much, because even though it isn't considered a sin per se in India the way it is in some other countries, there's still a lot of social stigma in going through an abortion. So, like you've done something bad. So, and of course, it's expensive and it's a medical procedure. So there's so many steps involved.
Right.
I don't know. This would require like a very large survey from lots of doctors. I don't know if this is something that people really keep as a backup option. This is more of a last resort situation. Because of the several factors involved, most heavily the economics of it. And because there has been a huge number of advancements in the contraceptive care we have available. We have new options, we have new drugs, we have lower dosages, we have better formulations, we have more interesting and updated devices we can use inside the body. That more and more people largely are focusing on better contraception access as opposed to focusing on abortion care. With all of that said, there is a very large population of this country that does go through sex selective abortion, no matter what the government or we as doctors try to do together. There are quacks, there are unregulated practitioners, unlicensed practitioners who do continue with this practice even today. So a very substantial burden of unsafe abortions in our country comes from these sources.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I was saying, I was going through reports wherein the kind of, and the way they are accessible is, I mean, it's shocking the way people get these surgeries done. And yes, a lot depends on these surgeries because, I mean, I've also heard of cases wherein these abortions have resulted to the woman not being able to produce kids later. Like the procedure.
We had a case.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a case quite recently where this young woman came to us for infertility, and we asked her several times, "Have you ever been pregnant before?" And she said, "No, no, 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 never." So we performed a procedure called a hysteroscopy, where we, like a laparoscopy, we take a camera and we go into the uterus to see what's up. Like, why is this not working? Tests seem to be fine, and inside we found tiny bones because she'd had an unsafe abortion at a younger age, and those bones had kind of stuck around the bones of the previous fetus because it was performed in an unsafe fashion. We still saw those little bones after. Eventually, she had to open up because we knew she'd had an abortion, and then we asked her because this was important for her future fertility planning. We asked her, what happened? this is important for your case history. So she mentioned that, her family forced her to go through a unsafe abortion because it was sex selective about 5 years ago, and since then she's been struggling to have a child. Uh, so there is a very, very significant number of people who have stories like this in our country.
Oh my God, that just and she's educated, right?
Not really, no. She
Not
was like
really. Okay.
eighth, ninth pass type.
Okay. So I think a lot of our conversation that we had today also concerns a particular demography of
Hmm.
people, like the educated people. I mean, like you spoke about the volume of child-free couples. I'm sure most of them are educated. Like you said, yes, they've taken a very educated decision. That is also a very important part when we discuss about the world population growth. And well, I think this was a very enlightening conversation, which I would want to conclude with your personal opinion. What we had so far was the sociological patterns we've studied, we've spoken about, we've taken a look at the uh, other factors which relate to medicine per se, and the trends changing medically, socially, everything. We've taken everything in account, and even economy for that matter, education, women, men, the disparity, this, that, all of that is there. But personally, if you were to talk about it, when you hear this prediction about the world population growth coming down, like the growth getting stunted eventually, what do you think? Is it like more of a natural phenomena where it follows a normal curve which has to peak out at one point, or whether it significantly depends upon the fact that yes, there are technological changes, there are more options available, there's lifestyle changes, all of what we discussed right now, just a few uh, minutes back. Yes.
I think it's a sign of advancement as a species. The fact that people are able to, instead of running on this primitive instinct that, the most primal instinct in every living being is that we need to pass on our genes. That's
Mm,
it. That's it. Just pass on your genes. Everything we do is geared towards and stems
right.
from this primal desire, this very primitive idea of, my genes should go on the longest. So it is definitely a science of advancement as a species for us. Uh, and it is a natural course of action for everything. There's a peak and then it kind of peters out from there. I don't believe that there will ever be a point purely from wanting to have children reasons that we will die out as a species, because there will always be people who will want to have
Right.
children. That there will, to balance that, there will always be people who will not want to have children.
Mm.
But I suppose historically there would have been a lot of people who would have not wanted to have children, but they didn't have these options. And
Mm.
now that people are having the ability and the time and the resources to make that decision is quite thrilling personally.
Right, right. I mean, it sounds like it's gonna end up becoming the survival of the fittest eventually. But I mean, yes, for sure. But that's actually a very insightful conversation we have had, which also had moments of humor for sure, and a few unfortunate incidents that we've also discussed about. But overall, a very wholesome conversation we've had with you, Dr. Tanaya. Thank you so much for all your insights. And I'm sure our viewers have a lot to think about now that we have laid out so much for them to analyze about. But definitely for all the viewers out there, I don't think we are going to get extinct. Neither does Dr. Tanaya here. There won't be a stage where we'll be struggling to keep people alive. And we'll have a stage where we'll be like, yes, we need to, again, go back to the notion of get married so that you can have kids. But yes, that was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on Clarity Amidst Clutter. And well, till the next episode, this is your host, Sriya Kundu from CNN News 18. Thank you. Bye bye. See you next time.